Hi, I'm Ainsley McClellan, the host of Good Question Montreal, the podcast where you ask the questions and we find out the answers. The landscape of the Golden Square Mile may have changed dramatically from the days of horses and carriages and footmen, but the buildings that remain tell us something about what society was like at the time and the wealth and power of the families who lived there. By the 1930s and 40s, the Golden Square Mile was changing. A lot of the children of those wealthy families were moving out into new residential neighborhoods, and a lot of the old mansions started to be torn down. By the 1970s, heritage advocates realized they had a problem on their hands. If you'd like to hear the full history of the Golden Square Mile, you can check out Good Question Montreal wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe because we have a lot of other questions to answer. If you have a question you'd like us to look into, go to cbc.ca/goodquestionmontreal. As the early 20th century progressed, life in the Golden Square Mile started to change. New roads opened, carriages gave way to automobiles. St. Catherine Street, which had taken over from Old Montreal as the commercial hub of the city, filled up with department stores, offices, and theaters. And the children of wealthy families moved into homes in newer residential neighborhoods, still posh, but without the trappings of the grand estates.
You start seeing elegant apartment buildings at the beginning of the century, certainly in the teens and 20s, but the old denizens were largely gone by 30s, 40s, and 50s. Or if they were still here, there might be a widow, like living alone in a huge house sort of thing. The bigger the mansion, it became literally like a white elephant. Like, what are you going to do? I mean, nobody wants to live in them. Nobody was that interested in restoring them.
By the 1960s and 70s, modernism demanded progress. And big old mansions, they didn't fit.
Wreckers finally tore down the Van Horn Mansion in downtown Montreal this weekend. They came in the dead of night to flatten the home of Canadian Pacific Railway builder William Van Horn.
Everything sort of hinged on the case of the Van Horn house, which is in fact was right here.
The Van Horn Mansion was built at the corner of Stanley and Sherbrooke in 1869. But a century later, the Van Horn estate couldn't pay for its upkeep and it was sold. In 1973, the city, under Mayor Jean Drapeau, approved the demolition. Both the city and the province decided that the home didn't have significant Quebec heritage value.
And there was a whole political fracas about tearing this down. It was underhanded. They did it, overnight when nobody was looking, kind of thing. People like Michael Fish and Phyllis Lambert, these are important names in the heritage movement, literally ran into the house before the bulldozers could get at it and grabbed chunks of just railings.
Inside, it's virtually a treasure house of very late, eclectic Victorian decorated rooms. Fireplaces, heavy carvings, light carvings. It's one of the most beautiful interiors to come out of Canada from the last century.
The two of them and several others formed Save Montreal and then Heritage Montreal in the mid-70s, and that became an important force for preserving things.
And the argument as to whether the Van Horn house could have been saved is an academic one at this point. What's real is what's still standing of the city's 19th century buildings and other historic landmarks.
And it's certainly up to us to fight to save every inch of what is left, because there's almost nothing left.
Stepping inside the Forget house on Sherbrooke Street is like stepping back in time.
We are now in the billiard room of Maison Forget. Senator Forget was a French-Canadian businessman, very successful. There are a number of Forget that were involved in the stock exchange, that were involved in the tramway companies.
It's a significant property, both because Louis-Joseph Forget was one of a smaller number of francophones to settle in this largely Anglo-Protestant area, and because the home has been remarkably well preserved on the inside. Dinu Bumbaru, Policy Director for Heritage Montreal, points out the rich wood accents on the wall, a tiled fireplace, and a massive stained glass skylight over the center of the room.
It's a house that was acquired by the Macdonald Stewart Foundation, a not-for-profit, which has put a lot of effort and attention and care on the house.
As we wrapped up our grand tour back at the Roddick Gates, Rod McLeod reflected on how the layers of built history all around us are what makes Montreal, Montreal.
A lot of other cities may have a little pocket somewhere that they just prize, but we have streets and streets of this. And that's really because of the efforts that Montrealers took, really starting in the 1970s.